The top 70 this week are playing in the FedEx St. Jude Championship at TPC Southwind, the first of the FedExCup playoff events. Now, Elk, one of the big talking points has been the fact that Justin Thomas is missing out on the playoffs for the first time in like 8 years. And he finished at number 71 in the standings. The bubble boy, the guy on 70, is Ben Griffin, who actually put out a great tweet. And he was like, fair play to Justin Thomas because he fought hard to give him a bit of a sweaty day on Sunday as he was watching to see what his final position was going to be. But it leads us to a bit of a case study looking at the importance of the guys getting into these designated events. Now, the designated events are the events during the season where it's a $20 million purse. The winner takes home $3 million. But the interesting point is that the FedExCup points stay the same. So the winner of the event still takes home 500 or is it 600 FedExCup points? I think it's a little bit higher, but really the breakdown isn't like quadruple points that we're talking about this week. And we do have a case study that we're going to talk about and that I want to get your opinion on here.
Yeah, so you said it correctly. Justin Thomas finished number 71 on the FedEx points list and missed the playoffs. Justin Thomas played in all the big events all season, the Memorial, Tigers tournament out at the Genesis, Bay Hill, all those big ones. And his total amount of points that left him number 71 on the FedExCup list, he earned $3.2 million in the bank for that. Now,
Nice.
Ben Griffin, who beat him into the playoffs, he had to play all the other tournaments because he wasn't in all the elevated ones, scored more points than Justin Thomas, and only won $1.2 million.
1.8. 1.8.
Sorry, $1.8 million for beating Justin Thomas. So if you ever needed a case study, Diane, that you need to be in the elevated events, I'm certain that we just made it.
This is it. I'm just going to look at Justin Thomas's season. So he played in 20 events. He made 14 cuts and 3 top 10s. And when you look at his good finishes, 4th at the WM Phoenix Open, which was a designated event. 10th at 21st at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Again, 21st, fine, but designated event. So there's a lot more money in there. 10th at the Valspar, 14th at the Wells Fargo, 9th at the Travelers, which was a designated event. And then, we've all looked at and talked about the problems that JT's been having in his game. So that's how his season went. But then if we want to look at Ben Griffin, who, as you say, finished at number 70 and made it into the playoffs this week. So when you look at his season, he's played in 30 events, so 10 more events than JT. 1 top 10 and has made 19 cuts. And a lot of his good finishes came in the fall swing last year, which was the start of this season. He finished 24th at the Sanderson Farms, 3rd at the Bermuda Championship, 16th at the Houston Open, 12th at the Sony Open in Hawaii. And then you kind of go down the list, and Ben Griffin missed a cut at the Wyndham, finished 20th at the 3M last week, missed a cut at the Open, 25th at the Scottish Open, 33rd at the Rockage, missed a cut at the Travelers. But with all his points, he sits at number 70 and has just over 1.8 million in the bank from this season. So
my tour player summary of that sounds to me like if I was in the locker room thinking about all this, JT won money in 14 events and Ben Griffin won money in 19 events. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly.
In the 14 events, JT won 3.2 million, and in the 19 events that Ben made money, he won 1.8.
Yeah.
So he won. He was in the money more times, but he won half as much. So
yeah,
this is a different tour, Diane, than before. Now that this product's changed, they're trying to push more of the good players into the big events. And look, there's an old saying on tour, you got to play better if you want to get in them. But look, let's face it, there's 200 guys on tour. There's only 70 guys getting in. So there's always going to be 130 guys that miss out on the big events. So very frustrating for some of these guys down below. But good for Ben.
Yeah, and he's in a great position now that his season is not over. So it's been extended by 1 week. And there's money up for grabs this week and a lot of FedEx Cup points that could potentially take him into next week and could even take him into the week after that if he has 2 really good weeks. So for Ben Griffin, he has the opportunity to really add to that bank balance for his 2023 season. And again, you'd much rather be in Ben's position than Justin Thomas's.
Yeah, so what you're saying, I've got a chance if I'm Ben Griffin. Now,
Thanks.
Justin Thomas, all the talk that's been surrounding and swirling around him about Ryder Cup, that will all simmer down now because he's not there to defend himself in the next couple of weeks in the playoffs. So we'll start to see other Ryder Cup stories emerge. He may get left out of the conversation completely. Who knows? Zach Johnson may have already decided in his mind that he would like to have JT and Spieth as partners. Has Zach Johnson decided he might put Bryson DeChambeau with Brooks Koepka in a match? Who knows? We're happy that Brian Harman looks like he secured his spot, and that'll be his, a feather in his cap because of all the Brian Harman stories that he was frustrated with his career and he wasn't winning enough. Now we have to consider that Brian Harman has national junior champion, twice a Walker Cupper, national champion at Georgia, multiple tour player, multiple tour PGA Tour champion, major champion, and Ryder Cup. Yeah. Brian, if you're worried about your resume, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're secure forever.
All right. And I still think that Justin Thomas's name is going to be in that Ryder Cup conversation in the next couple of weeks.
It's key, but it may not be. It may not stand for the same letters. It may not be the same.
Maybe JT Poston, but I do think that it is dependent on a few players and how they play. The likes of Sam Burns, Cameron Young, some of the guys that are in the Ryder Cup conversation and in that part of the Ryder Cup rankings, how they perform over the next few weeks is going to impact whether or not Justin Thomas gets a pick.
I know one thing. I know whose shoes I'd like to be in. I'd like to be in Zach Johnson's shoes and not your captain's shoes. Luke Donald. Luke Donald's got a much tougher job. He's got to untangle all of his top players on the European side and get all the experience up into the team. And then he's got to basically roll the dice with a bunch of rookies to see who can put in there with form to try to sort of, hold back this sort of flow of top players the Americans are putting forward. And Diane, you know this better than anyone growing up in Scotland. To me in Australia, it goes in waves. But right now, the US is loaded with depth, and it's going to be tough for Luke Donald to sort of put paper on paper against this strong American team, at least today.
Well, the guys have got this week and next week to earn Ryder Cup points, and we will be keeping an eye on that and checking in on the rankings and where these guys stand as we get closer to Italy in September.